Good afternoon. Today we will study about a verb. A verb is a description for a subject in a clause. The verb describes the subject with one of the three definitions. Let's start to study about the first definition of a verb. The first definition of a verb is about an experience. A verb describes an experience of a subject. The experience is complete at the point in time when a speaker declares the experience that is gone through by the subject more than once for a period. The speaker who states a clause about an experience of a subject reveals the fact that the experience of the subject actualized or actualizes more than once, and the speaker describes the experience that is in a period. So we can understand that the prerequisite to state a clause about an experience is the time for the experience more than once and a period for the experience. The speaker who describes the experience states a clause in the perfect tense. The speaker declares the completion of the experience during a period at a point in time. The gap between the point in time when the speaker declares the completion of the experience and the present when the speaker states this clause to the listeners in the conversation is revealed with the form of the intransitive verb have as tense for the clause. The speaker declares the completion of the experience during a period, so we can understand that the term, the perfect tense, means that the experience of the subject becomes perfect when the speaker declares the completion of the experience with a statement. The verb have is applied as an intransitive verb in the clause to state the experience of the subject. Because the speaker states how the subject has the experience in the clause stated in the perfect tense. The definition of the transitive verb have starts from the subject and arrives to the object that the subject has. So we can understand that the speaker who states the clause in the perfect tense conveys the definition of the verb have to the object that the speaker does not state in the clause, obviously. So the verb have is applied as an intransitive verb. In this perspective, we can understand that the past participle graded is applied as an adverb to specify the definition of the intransitive verb have. The speaker has a specific period for an experience. Even though the speaker does not state the object of to apply the verb have as an intransitive verb, so that the speaker reveals about how the experience of the subject is, the listeners can understand that the speaker as the subject exists during the period when the subject is in the subject is going through the experience. And we will also think of the reason why the past participle graded to specify the definition of the intransitive verb have has the form that is suitable to describe the object in the relationship between the subject and object. The speaker who exists during the period for the experience receives the flow of time that the experience of the subject actualized or actualizes more than once. So we can wonder about who the subject is for the speaker as the subject to be in the period for an experience. We can understand that our spiritual father, the one, allows us the period, and the speaker receives the influence of time for the experience as the object for the experience. The speaker declares the completion of the experience. This means that the subject-object relationship between the period and the speaker as the subject is complete at the present when the speaker states this clause in the conversation between the speaker and the listeners, because the form of the intransitive verb have reveals that this clause is stated in the present perfect tense. This is obvious when we think of watching a clock to check the time for actualizing a specific plan. We respond to the time, so we can understand that we are the object to receive the period of time from the time as the subject. And we can also understand that the relationship between the time, the period for the experience, is the unstated object for the speaker as the subject to have an experience. The speaker as the subject starts and gets into the period for an experience. So in this relationship, the subject becomes the subject. The speaker as the subject is the subject in the relationship with the period for the experience. And in the experience, when the speaker as the subject got into the period for an experience, the speaker as the subject receives the influence from the time as we check the clock to see the time to actualize a plan. So we can understand that the relationship of the subject and the time is mutual. This is the explanation about the relationship between the subject and the period for an experience. And this explanation becomes easier when we think of the premise for the speaker to state this clause. The speaker as the subject exists at a specific point in time and a place. That's the premise for the speaker to state this clause. We can also understand that the reason why the speaker does not state the object, the period of the verb, of the intransitive verb have, obviously, because the period for the subject to exist is considered one of the two premises.